The Big Blue Box Podcast, Episode 5.
Hello, I'm the Doctor.
Hello Who fans, coming to you from somewhere in space and time. This is the Big Blue Box Podcast. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope you guys have had a good week and enjoyed episode 4. Coming up in today's show, we've got the usual newsy roundup. In this episode's TARDIS talk, we're going to be talking about an article that I read recently about starting your Doctor Who collection and the different methods and ways that you can do that. And in this week's classic retrospective, we're going to be talking about Planet of the Spiders with Jon Pertwee. So let's crack on with the news. So first up in the news this week, I found this really cool Doctor Who parody video that seems to be doing the rounds at the moment on YouTube and all of the other Doctor Who sites and so on. And it's by this sister, two sisters. They run this show called The Hillywood Show, which you can check out at thehillywoodshow.com. And so they've done like these other cool big movie parodies. I think they've got Pirates of the Caribbean coming up, and they've done some other very cool ones. But the Doctor Who one is really well done. I was surprised that, because normally when you see Doctor Who parodies or anything of that nature, like fan films and that kind of stuff, it's normally quite a low budget affair, and it's although some of them are quite entertaining and it's quite cool, this one seems to have like a really good, almost broadcast quality budget, and it's the props are like just really well done, and it's just really funny. That's the best thing about it. It's really funny. So the concept is they've taken the old classic song The Time Warp, and they've, it kind of fits the overall, the wording and the vibe of the song suits Doctor Who very well. So they've taken that song and they've made this music video essentially around it, and it's really funny. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to it so you can go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. And one of the things that I found really good about it was I honestly thought that it was David Tennant doing the voiceover and the song, because whoever they've got to do the voice of David Tennant is really good. I don't think that, because it was weird, because a part of me thought no, David Tennant wouldn't be involved in something like this, although he's very much about the show still and doesn't shy away at all from anything to do with Doctor Who. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that he would do, but there are a few phrases within the video that are just spot on. I'll have to find out the name of the person who did the voice for that, but it's actually quite scary how accurate some of the phrases are, like when he shouts Alonzi, like that first part of the song where he's quite calm and just talking as David Tennant would as the Doctor. It's very cool, and the basis for the whole video is actually David Tennant. It's him in the brown suit and stuff, and it's got Martha in there, it's got Donna, Rose, and it's like key points from the David Tennant era that they've kind of replayed in this video. And then it's got like a big stage production. It cuts from like these various like key scenes throughout David Tennant's era to like this big like West End or show kind of scene. It's like loads of extras all in Doctor Who costumes, and they're really well done. It's got Daleks in it, everything. So I think, it looks like they've thrown a ton of money at it, and it's just really cool. So go and check that out. It's really funny. I'll put a link in the show notes for you.
It's astounding. Time is fleeting. Madness takes its toll. But listen closely.
Not for very much longer.
I've got to. Alonzi! I remember during the Time Warp.
Next bit of news for you guys. We've got some more classic Who coming to TV. It's not in the UK, but over in the US, you guys will be glad to hear that you've got a load of classic Who coming up on an American network called Retro TV. I've not heard of it before. But the actual concept sounds really, really cool. I wish we had something like this in the UK, where they play all these really cool classic shows. And we've got a channel called, I think it's still called Gold, UK Gold. But it's not kind of, you really have to kind of keep in tune with it to find out when stuff's coming on. But this retro TV sounds very, very cool. So at some point throughout the summer, I don't know exactly when, but you guys are going to get a load of classic Who, which is very cool. And we had a similar thing here in the UK. Started a few months ago now. We've got a channel called the Horror Channel, and it's not all kind of horror. There's a lot of sci-fi on there as well. But they had this like big event to launch Doctor Who on. It was called Who on Horror, and we've had some really, really good classic stuff on there. And it was only literally this morning I finished watching Planet of the Spiders, which I'm going to talk about later, which I didn't pick up on DVD. I recorded it on the Horror Channel. So hopefully you guys will be able to get some really good Who stuff. As far as I know, there's going to be none of the Doctor Who from 2005. This is all just classic Who. But nevertheless, it's a very cool thing if you're into your Doctor Who, your classic years, and you maybe haven't seen them all, or you want to start getting into the classic stuff but you don't really want to invest in a load of DVDs. This is a very cool thing. So I'll let you guys know the date when I find out, but at the moment it's just summer, so that could be anything from in a couple of months' time to 2 or 3 months' time. I'm not sure, but I will let you know. And lastly, in this new section we have, you guys have probably seen, if you haven't then you've probably been under a rock somewhere, but the BBC have released a new trailer for Series 8. Yay, Series 8 Capaldi. It's only a short trailer, I must admit. It wasn't. When they said they've released a trailer, I was expecting a trailer, whereas to me this is more of a promo, because it's literally only, I don't know, 10-15 seconds long, and all you really see is the silhouette of Peter Capaldi in the TARDIS, with some like dramatic music and stuff. So while it's very cool and it shows that the BBC want to keep our interest, not that they have to for Who fans, to be perfectly honest with you, but just to keep us interested in what's going on. They've released it. I'm not going to call it a trailer anymore, because it's not really a trailer. It's more of like a little promo spot. So they've released this promo. It's very, very cool, and it's just another pose really for Capaldi that we haven't seen, because the only thing that we've got from him so far is the regeneration stuff from last year. And we've got some set photos where fans have been able to meet him and stuff and taken photos and that kind of thing. And we've had the publicity shot with him in his costume. So this is just another pose and another look to add to that kind of little collection really before the series starts. And talking of this series start, it's going to be in August at some point. Now, we haven't got a definitive date as yet, but we do know it's definitely going to start in August, which is great news, because we're now at the end of May. So we've only really got 2 months and then we're into August, so I'm not sure when. I'm hoping it's going to be kind of mid-August, which will be very cool. So yeah, Series 8, it's upon us almost. We've just a little bit longer to hang in there until we get it. But for me personally, I think Series 8 is going to be absolutely brilliant, because I'm really looking forward to Capaldi more than anything. I think he's going to be a really, really good Doctor, and I can't wait to see what he brings to that role and what he makes the show. So that's going to be really cool. And that wraps up the news.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is very cool. Bow ties are cool.
In previous podcasts, you would have heard me reference this section of the show as just discussion or what I feel about whatever. So I thought this section needed a bit of more of a proper title, really. So I'm going to label these sections of the podcast where I just get my feelings out and my little rants and whatever it might be. I'm just going to label these up as TARDIS Talk, which is simple enough. So this episode's TARDIS Talk is going to be about Doctor Who merchandise and starting your collection and that kind of thing. And I've been thinking about this for about a week now after I read an article from a particular website, and the article was titled How to Start Your Own Doctor Who Collection, which I thought was very cool. And essentially it's just like a checklist of things that you want to try and do, and it tries to help you make decisions around what type of collection you want to make, and where to start, and all that kind of stuff. And for the most part, I think it's a very, very good article. I think it covers a lot of basics that if you haven't really got much in the way of a Doctor Who collection, and you want to get into that, or you want to start making your collection larger and get more stuff, I think it has got some really good points. Like, for example, point 1 is focus on where you want to start, which goes through things like focus on what you want to collect, rather than trying to copy what other people are doing. And it just reminds you that collecting is a very personal thing, and there's no right or wrong and that sort of stuff. So that's very cool. And then it goes on to decide early if you'll be a hands-on or a mint-in-box collector. So I kind of see the value in that. If you want to start collecting stuff that you can actually pick up and move and make displays with, and all that kind of stuff, or if you want to just be like the collector where you kind of go for more higher value stuff that's still unopened boxes and stuff that you feel might hold some value in later years, I can understand that. Then it moves on to large quantity versus high quality, which is a similar thing. And then point number 4, there are actually 6 points. I'll come back to point number 4 in a second, because that's the one that I had my biggest kind of thought process on. So number 5 was to keep a list of what you want to add to your collection, which is kind of. And number 6 was find a place to show off your new collection, which is kind of a given, really. I don't see why you would invest plenty of money into a Doctor Who collection to keep it in the cupboard or anything like that. So that's kind of a given, really. But point number 4, which is the one that kind of had me thinking the most, and while I agree with it to an extent, I kind of challenged it, in my own mind a little bit. And point number 4 is buy your Doctor Who merchandise online. Now, overall, I honestly don't have a problem with that, because I haven't got the biggest Doctor Who collection in the world. It's okay, but I haven't got, certainly not the biggest collection. And I would say about half of that, well, maybe a third of that, is stuff that I've personally bought online. The rest of it is stuff that I've bought out in the real world. And it kind of got me thinking a lot about this, and I thought, well, do you really want to buy all of your merchandise online? Is there, because, and I'm not talking about the obvious benefits and stuff of just generally buying stuff online, because that could apply to anything, not just Doctor Who merchandise in your collection, but just generally shopping online. I think we're all aware of the benefits of that. So you can normally find stuff online cheaper. There's a whole kind of review and rating system for websites which can be useful. So if you're looking at something in particular and you think you're umming and ahhing a little bit, sometimes reading a review can tip you over to buying that, or it can kind of swing you the other way and you're like, right, I'm glad I didn't buy it now. And there's also things like, you don't have to, you can be a bit of a lazy kind of shopper online. You don't really have to go anywhere. You can get stuff delivered out to you. So, this kind of, all that kind of stuff about buying online, it does apply to just general shopping as well. But some of the points that they raise, in, like one of the points that they've put in there is online stores tend to have a much wider range, which is kind of true. I guess not a lot of shops will stock a lot of Doctor Who stuff unless you go to a dedicated shop, which I'll come on to in a little while. One of the points that they raise in this is that online stores don't have any overheads to pay, so they can pass that saving on to the consumer, which is not always true, but I guess that does apply mainly online. But there's 2 things that that I didn't really sit pretty with me. The first one was retail stores have hundreds of customers walk in every day and manhandle the stock, which leads to ruined packaging amongst other things. Now, I don't know what those other things are, but that's true of anything. You can't just, in this particular article, you can't apply the benefits of online shopping to Doctor Who merchandise, but then, not apply the same to other stuff that you would buy in a shop. So it's not just Doctor Who merchandise, that applies to anything. And I don't think this kind of holds much water because, you know, outside of things like the BBC Doctor Who experience in Cardiff, where they've got a gift shop and some other bits and pieces, the only other merchandise that you would find in a retail shop would be something like toy shops, like Toys R Us and that kind of stuff, where that's kind of toys. You know what I mean? It's not really collectibles as such.
Morning, Dr. Dixon here. Now, this would be enough for most Doctor Who fans, but for our collect this morning, well, he likes to do things on a bigger scale. Meet his family of Daleks and Cybermen, and this, I promise you, is just the beginning of his collection.
Hi, my name's Peter and I've got a huge passion for Doctor Who. My house is like a mini museum. Everywhere you turn there's Doctor Who memorabilia or Doctor Who stuff.
You would expect that anyway, so that's kind of a moot point. And then they kind of close this article off by saying, buying your Doctor Who stuff online is a must for anyone starting a new collection because you get your merchandise for a lot cheaper, which means you can grow your collection a lot faster. And that really kind of, you know, I actually wrote a comment on this post, and I'll give you the link afterwards, but there's no reason why, because if you're going to buy your Doctor Who stuff online, that's absolutely fine. I have no issue with that at all. But, you know, building up your collectibles and your collection is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's something that, you know, you take pride in building up over time. And this article kind of, it's kind of like, you need to get online now, you need to spend loads of money, you need to get your collection up and running as soon as possible. And it's not, you know, that's not really, if you're a true collector, you'll probably disagree with that as well. There's no point in just shedding out a ton of money to get a load of Doctor Who stuff collected for you to then just put it on the shelf and say, right, that's, you know, my collection started, I've got a load of stuff, great. Because you need to take your time with it. You know, it's not like you have to get your collection in as soon as possible. And this article kind of gives off that vibe a little bit on this point anyway. Which leads me on to some of the things that I've experienced when I've picked up a few collectibles myself. And I'm so glad that I didn't buy them online, because I'm gonna give you two examples of buying stuff not online and the benefits of those. The first one is buying stuff at conventions. Now, if you go to any convention, whether it's a general sci-fi or whatever, there's always loads and loads of stalls. There's a couple of conventions that I go to in the UK. One of them is called Collectormania, which is run in Milton Keynes, and the other one is the London Film and Comic Con, which is run obviously in London, plus a few other small ones that I go to as well. But at all of these conventions, there's always loads and loads of stalls with people selling collectibles, general merchandise, clothing, all that type of stuff for pretty much the same or similar price that you would find them online, because it's not like they have to go into, it's not like they're selling like retail prices. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are certain things there, and if you're listening to this and you've been to conventions, you've probably seen them where you think, well, that isn't that much cheaper or any cheaper at all than me ordering it off Amazon or whatever. You can find some really good deals there. And also, you've got that marketplace kind of vibe as well, where you can attempt to haggle with people. You know, if you find something cool and it's like 50 quid, you can say, you know, I've got a budget of 40 for this, will you take 40? And you know, a lot of stalls will do that because they just want to, you know, they want to sell something and not at all. And also at conventions, you've got the benefit of, you know, mingling with other like-minded fans. You know, you've got a load of cosplayers, you know, really into Doctor Who, and you can, you know, it's just a really good atmosphere and a good vibe. And secondly, the people who run these stalls, they're usually really cool to chat to. I mean, a couple of times when I've been there and I've purchased stuff, I've ended up spending like 5 minutes or so just talking to people who run the stall, and, you know, just getting into a conversation about Doctor Who and whatever. So that's the first one. If you can get out to some conventions, they're really, really cool, and they can be some great, great collectibles that you can pick up there. And secondly, there are some very cool shops for Doctor Who, which are absolute gold mines and real gems. And there's a shop which I haven't been to. It's on the Isle of Wight, and I cannot remember the life of me. I'll put it in the show notes for you. which apparently is very, very good. But the store that I want to mention, which is really, really good, is called The Who Shop. And it's in London. It's right next door to West Ham's football ground. It's kind of in an unlikely part of London. You wouldn't imagine that shop would be in that part of London. It's kind of weird. You wouldn't expect it to be in that part of London, but nevertheless, it's a really, really good shop, and it mainly focuses on the classic side of Doctor Who. I mean, it has a lot of modern stuff in there in terms of merchandise. It does have a lot of stuff in there, but for me, the best thing about that shop is the atmosphere and the vibe and the experience is just so good. The people who run that shop, it's a really lovely couple and some nice young lads who run that shop, and their knowledge of Doctor Who is just mind-blowing, especially the classic stuff. And they've actually got a museum there as well. And don't get me wrong, it's not huge, but the stuff that they've got in there is really, it's just a Doctor Who friend of mine referenced it as an Aladdin's cave, and that really is how you would describe it, really. So it's not the biggest shop in the world, but the stuff that they have in there is just so good. They've got a really good range of t-shirts, and their clothing stuff is really good. You won't find a lot of those t-shirts online anywhere. Loads and loads of classic Who stuff, books that you wouldn't see. They stock a load of books that have been out for years and out of print and stuff. They stock all that stuff. They've got the museum there. It's really cool. And just homeware, loads of different stuff. And it's just a really good experience going for a shop there. And what I was saying earlier about being at conventions and having a chat with people there, it's the same vibe in that shop. You don't just go in there and you look for something, you pay for it and leave. They're very chatty in there. They like to talk to you about stuff, and you kind of just get drawn into this conversation about anything to do with Doctor Who, really, and it's really, really cool. And you can definitely find some stuff in there that you won't find online. So to kind of summarise this section, it's kind of, while I agree to an extent that yes, buying your Doctor Who stuff online is a good way to go. It does have its benefits. I can definitely see that, because I do shop online for that stuff. I'm not just going to say, you should never shop online. Never. It's not like that at all. I agree mostly that you can buy stuff online, and it's great. However, don't disregard the benefits of getting out there and going to places and talking to people, because especially for collectors, you'll find you'll be talking to people and you'll be made aware of stuff that you didn't realise was out there. So if you're talking to, if you're out at a convention somewhere and you end up talking to somebody about a certain collectible, they might have something or know of something that you didn't know about, and then you might want to go out and try and find that and stuff. So just don't be closed off to the world and just sit there in front of your computer and order stuff, because it kind of takes the fun out of it just a little bit. I would definitely recommend going out, talking to people, looking for your stuff in the flesh and building your collection that way. So I'd be interesting to see actually what your thoughts are on this, on how you pick up your collectibles and merchandise and stuff like that. And what would be cool if you went over to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Big Blue Box Podcast. Put some photos of your collection so I can see, what you guys are collecting at the moment, and just show off your collections a little bit. And then just a small note, tell me, how you got it. Did you get it all online? Did you go out and get it? Did you mix and match? So I'd be really interested to find out. Yes, that wraps up TARDIS Talk. So this week's classic retrospective is Jon Pertwee's Planet of the Spiders.
Hello, Sarah Jane.
Stop!
Don't do that.
Let him approach.
You will kneel to the most noble queen.
The Queen? Oh, yes. Yes, of course. Greetings, O most noble Queen. May I ask what you intend to do with this young lady?
You do not speak like a two-leg. Where have you come from?
Both Miss Smith and I come from Earth, Your Majesty.
From Earth? Then you are the one who... No, that cannot be. We shall return. Bring this two-leg. We shall question him with the female.
So another Pertwee story for you. We've been kind of getting into the Pertwee stuff over the last few weeks. I think I've mentioned before that Jon Pertwee's not my favourite of doctors, should we say, and that's not a criticism to Jon Pertwee in any way. It's just in terms of the classic years, I've got my more likeable doctors that I prefer to watch, and their stories and stuff. But since I've been watching a few of the Pertwee stuff, I've actually got into it a little bit, and I don't actually mind him as the Doctor as much as I thought I did. And some of his stories are cracking. Inferno is one of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories, actually, which is a Pertwee one. Spearhead from Space. Those two stories are probably two of they go into my top 10 in terms of classic Who. And so I thought I'd check out some other Pertwee stuff, and literally just this morning I've finished up watching Planet of the Spiders. Now this one is good. It's another good story. It's well written, and I'll keep it brief because this one is actually split over 6 episodes, I believe. They're only 25 minutes each, but it's the majority of I think with the exception of Genesis of the Daleks and a couple of others, as far as I remember, the last few kind of serials that I've watched have been 4-parters. So this one's over 6 parts. It was released back in 1974, back in May, and yeah, so it's Jon Pertwee's final story as the Doctor. This is his he bows out of the role in this one, and it's kind of a muted Doctor Who story to me. There wasn't much in the way of big epic moments. There wasn't much in the way of like huge action scenes or anything like that. There's a few kind of rough and tumble bits, but overall I found it quite an understated and a muted story. But one of the things that kind of echoes that is Jon Pertwee's performance. As this is his last one, he's kind of got that vibe where the only way that I can describe it is when you've finished school or you've finished a particular job, you don't feel any pressure for anything. It's kind of like, well, why was I, for all those years during high school or for those years that I was at a particular job, why did I feel that pressure? Now I'm leaving, I don't feel any, So it kind of has that, he has that very confident, quiet confidence about him in this one. Very assured, very my job's done kind of thing. And that really does come out in his performance. In some of the other stories that I've watched with Pertwee, he's been very, a bit more, not erratic, but a bit more active, a bit more randomness to his performance, whereas this one was very calm and collected throughout the whole thing, really. Even when there were points where, he thought his game was up, and when he was under attack by certain things, even then he was still pretty calm about things, and yeah, so I just got that feeling that he was, as it was his last one, he didn't really feel like the pressure was on in like the first part of his era. So companion wise, Sarah Jane Smith, she's actually pretty cool in this. There was one point where she was actually quite scary, which was when she was when her mind was taken over by one of the spiders. So she was quite cool. Supporting cast, not too bad. The Brigadier was back. He didn't really have a big part in it, to be honest with you. But Nicholas Courtney, I really like him as the Brigadier. He's been very cool. I really liked him in Inferno, actually. Yeah, so he was very cool. And then the supporting cast, there was a questionable casting in terms of a guy called Kan Po, which kind of had a slight kind of racial thing going on. I'm not quite sure why they cast a typically British actor to play that kind of role. I'm not quite sure on that one. And other than that, it was the supporting cast were okay. Essentially, it was 5 or 6 gentlemen that like typical 70s guys, really. The acting wasn't too bad with those guys. but they did what they had to do. There was one guy who was quite cool, the character called Tommy. He was played by John Cain, and he starts off in the story as this kind of simpleton. He doesn't really know how to read, and he's a bit one of life's simple sort of people. But due to him being exposed to something, he then turns into quite an intellectual guy, and he plays kind of a childlike figure almost, where he's very innocent, and there's not a bad bone in his body really, and that comes through in the latter half of the story where he's quite brave and stuff. So I really like that character. And yet, like I said, the supporting cast were okay. Nothing really stand out too much. Probably the biggest character in the supporting cast was a character called Lupton, played by John Dirth, and he was okay. I found his acting to be a bit OTT when it didn't necessarily call for it to be, played in that way. But he was okay. So that was a cast. The cast was okay. John Pertwee was really, really good, and Sarah Jane Smith was cool. The setup for this story, it's essentially humans versus spiders. It's the only way I can describe it in a one-liner. It kind of starts off with, again, as it's very common in classic Doctor Who, in rural England somewhere, in a very big stately home, there's it's like this meditation kind of place, and the character Mike Yates from a previous episode, who was actually part of UNIT, is discharged, and now he's in this place, and he knows that something isn't right. There's this group of people in there who are up to no good, so he calls upon Sarah Jane Smith, and once Sarah Jane Smith gets involved, then the Doctor gets involved, and it just snowballs from there. So it's kind of weird how the Doctor kind of gets involved, really, because he's kind of minding his own business for once. He's in the lab, he's doing his thing, and it's really Sarah Jane who's the catalyst to get the Doctor involved and stuff. On this planet called Metabellis 3, it's basically run by spiders. Now there are humans on this planet as well, but they live in fear of the spiders, so they don't really prosper. They're kind of like these little clans, if you like. But the guys in the meditation home, that makes it sound like they're kind of OAPs. The guys in the meditation center, I guess, they're kind of down in the cellar doing these charts and stuff, and they're actually communicating with the spiders on Metabellis 3, and it's not until one of the guys gets transported there that the story really kicks off, because he then brings the spider back to Earth with him, and then because these spiders are after this particular crystal, which the Doctor stole many, many years ago. So this big queen spider basically wants the crystal back for her great plan. So she sends this guy Lupton. So what happens is these spiders, they jump on your back, and then they kind of morph into you. They turn invisible, but they control your mind. And they don't take over your mind completely, but they get you to do their bidding, kind of thing. And I think there was inspiration drawn on this story for one of the Russell T Davies stories, which featured heavily with Donna Noble, which I'm pretty sure was called Turn Left, where she had this kind of strange spidery crab thing on her back, but other people couldn't see it. So it was a very similar concept. So I'm sure that Russell T Davies would have drawn inspiration from this. But so the spiders, they kind of they get you to do their bidding. So as you can imagine, the Doctor gets caught up in this. They end up on Metabellis 3, and it's that's for me where the story kind of, if I had to give one criticism of the story, it's where once the Doctor and Sarah are on that planet, it kind of moves a bit slowly from there, because the objective for the spiders is to get the crystal, which is on Earth, but it takes them a very long time in order to get to Earth to try and get the crystal, So I think maybe this could have been done in 4 episodes as opposed to 6. But yeah, that if I had to give a criticism of the story and the pacing and stuff, then yeah, it could have been done in 4. So essentially, what happens is the Doctor stumbles upon this big queen spider, which I think they refer to as the Great One. Yeah, the Great One, and he kind of gets exposed a little bit for the first time in his life as that character anyway, as part of his fear, his greatest fear, and based on that, he has to make a really tough decision towards the end of the story. But in before that, they kind of get a little help from the one of the Tibetan guys who's running this meditation center, a character called Choji, yeah, which is a really old Tibetan guy. And it turns out that the Doctor knows this character. He was one of he actually taught the Doctor kind of like a guru kind of thing many years ago, which the Doctor didn't recognize at first. But it turns out that this particular character is a Time Lord, which I found that to be a really good part of the story, a really nice little twist, because with the exception of the Master, you don't really see many other Time Lords running around. So this character was actually a Time Lord and chose a different way of life, in a very similar way that the Doctor did. And there is quite a nice jokey little part between them where he explains that we chose separate lives from the Time Lords, and he's kind of like this little amusing bit where he's like, well, possibly I wouldn't have gone down your route of stealing a TARDIS kind of thing. That was and they have like a little chuckle and stuff. And it's very, very cool because we actually get 2 regenerations in this story. Because, as I said, this is Jon Pertwee's last story, so a regeneration for him is inevitable. But this other Time Lord, Choji, he actually regenerates as well. It's kind of weird because there's a younger Tibetan guy called Kenpo who's kind of overseeing this Tibetan meditation center, and it turns out that I think I got this bit correct, but it turns out that he wasn't really there. He was more of a forerunner to what Choji would be when he regenerates. It's kind of weird. It's a bit timey-wimey, and so when Choji actually regenerates, he becomes Kanpo. So we get 2 regenerations, which is very cool. So before that, the Doctor actually returns the crystal to Metebelis 3, goes to see the Great One. She's got this master plan that she's constructed this huge kind of crystal made up of tiny little crystals, and by doing that, her brain matter and her thoughts will be able to encompass the universe, and she'll be able to control everything. And the Doctor then tries to convince her otherwise, that this isn't going to work. She doesn't listen. She takes the crystal. As the Doctor rightly said, it doesn't work. But the trouble is, this particular cave system where the Great One, this Queen Spider's living, because of I assume it's something to do with the radioactivity or whatever given off by these crystals, it kind of breaks down the cells in human bodies or any other body for that matter, and you begin to die. So because the Doctor's been exposed to it, that's what triggers his kind of death cycle and his regeneration. And that's basically the story. Like I said, in a one-liner, it's like spiders versus humans. So overall, I kind of thought the story was, like I said, it could have been condensed a little bit. It didn't really need to go on for 6 episodes, but it's very, very good. It's a very good story, and I really enjoyed Jon Pertwee in this. And like I said earlier, he's got this very confident, assured way about him, which is really good. The spiders were quite well done. They're all models. None of them are, obviously back at that time, you wouldn't have been able to have half a dozen CG spiders running around. It just wasn't possible at the time. So they're all models, which is, if you've spoken to any Classic Who fans, they'll all tell you that that's part of the appeal of Classic Who, these kind of cheap sets and cheapish looking models. But these spiders were actually done pretty well in terms of how they look. I mean, they were done pretty well. The only thing that was restricted on them was their movement. Yeah, but I'm assuming because of budget restraints, they couldn't make these, quite crazy models that actually moved. So they do kind of bob up and down, and they turn a little bit, and that's your lot. And I think when they showed the spiders moving along the floor, I'm going to take a guess at this one that it was just some fishing line pulling them along, and then there's like these little triggers that make their legs flick slightly. So it wasn't great, but that's expected to be the case with Classic Who. So the spiders were done well. There was a little bit of blue screen stuff in there, which as expected at the time, it's pretty basic. But I enjoyed the overall story. It was quite cool, and I liked the little additional Time Lord characters that were in there. I thought that was quite cool. And then moving on to the important part of one of the important parts of the story at the end, where the Doctor regenerates. I thought that was quite. For me, it was well written because it matched the other elements of this story, and that is, it was quite an understated regeneration, which you typically found with Classic Who. But to me, this all kind of linked together with Jon Pertwee wasn't really zany or quirky in any way in this one. Sarah Jane was, kind of did her job pretty well. Actually, yeah, before I move on to that, I just want to mention Sarah Jane's character and what I said earlier about her being quite scary at one point. While she's on Metebelis 3, the Queen Spider actually does start to control her, but you don't know about it at the time, which is quite well done. It's quite a nice little twist where she kind of encourages the Doctor and so on to go back to Earth to get the crystal, or back to Earth to escape initially. And then when they go back and they see Cho-Jae, they actually start talking, and it turns out that he's got the crystal. And then as soon as Sarah Jane sees that he has the crystal, her persona and her, everything just changes immediately, and you can tell that she's being controlled. And it's the way that she plays it is actually a little bit creepy. She does it very, very well, because where she's talking, it's another voice coming out of her, really. So that was quite cool. Just wanted to mention that. That was a kind of a cool twist, and I really liked how that was done. But yeah, so the regeneration, it was really understated because it linked Jon Pertwee's understated performance with the kind of calm, kind of to the point pacing and stuff. And there wasn't much in the way of action, really. There was a couple of little fight scenes here and there, but there was nothing too mad. So it actually fit in with the rest of the story. And yeah, I'm not these classic regenerations. They are very slow and and quite calm in how they do it, versus like the newer stuff where you see like the regeneration energy like exploding out of people with nice big yellowy vapor and stuff. It's complete opposite.
The Doctor is alive.
No, you're wrong. He's dead.
All the cells of his body have been devastated by the Metebelis crystals, but you forget. He is a Time Lord. I will give the process a little push and the cells will regenerate. He will become a new man.
Literally?
Of course, he will look quite different.
Not again.
And it will shake up the brain cells a little. You may find his behavior somewhat erratic.
Well, when will all this happen?
Well, there's no time like the present, is there? Goodbye. Look after him.
Now, wait a moment.
Look, Brigadier, look! I think it's starting.
Well, here we go again.
And it's quite a nice scene actually, where Sarah Jane's obviously really upset because she doesn't want the Doctor to die, and the Doctor's like, why are you upset? Tears, Sarah Jane. It's quite slow and sad, and as something that I haven't really seen that much of in Doctor Who is, and it's the first time for me anyway where I've seen, I think it is anyway, where there's been a regeneration where you haven't seen like a new expression or a one-liner from the new Doctor. So Jon Pertwee is just laid out, and then it transitions into Tom Baker, but you don't see him doing anything. It's Tom Baker's just lying there, and then that's it. It's done. So yeah, that was kind of surprising to me. I would have thought that with other regenerations that I've seen, where the Doctor regenerates and then before the end of the episode you get the new Doctor giving you at least a one-liner or something. So this one was, it really did leave you in suspense. If you didn't know, I imagine at the time back in the 70s it would have been very much of a cliffhanger, because if you weren't really aware of Tom Baker that much, or I don't think he'd been in that much at all before then. You were kind of thinking, well, who's this guy? Who's this guy? What's he going to be like? So that was quite cool. So overall, Planet of the Spiders, I really enjoyed it. I thought Jon Pertwee was really good, and I'm really getting into Pertwee a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, he's still not in my, topping the list for classic Doctors, but I am really enjoying what he did with the role. And Planet of the Spiders, I'd probably, out of 10, I would give it a 7. So it wasn't amazing, it definitely wasn't poor, but I thought it was very good, and I really enjoyed it. So that wraps up the Classic Retro for this week. That wraps up episode 5 of the Big Blue Box podcast. Thank you once again for joining me. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll put some links in the show notes for you so you can go and check out some of the cool stuff. Really recommend going and watching the Hillywood Show Doctor Who parody. It's really funny and really well done. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts as well on the collectible subject. How did you start your collection? Do you still collect? Where do you get your stuff from? Do you prefer online or going out and shopping, or a bit of both? I'd just be really interested to find out, and also pop some pictures on of your collection as well. I'd really love to see what you guys are in your certain phase of collecting, or where you are, and if there's anything else you want to grab, or if there's anything that you want to get that you can't get hold of. Is there any kind of rare collectibles or anything that you want to find but you just haven't found it on eBay yet, or anything like that? I'd be really interested to know. So you can find me on the usual social channels. You can find me on Twitter. The address is at Big Blue Box PCast. Just to make sure that you get that address right, because I had to shorten it a bit to fit it on Twitter. So it's not Big Blue Box Podcast, it's at Big Blue Box PCast. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Big Blue Box Podcast. And also you can find all of these podcasts and some other bits and pieces over at the site, www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. I will see you next time, but until then, Alonzi!